Alright, y'all, check this out. BCM Raider here, bringing you another Commander deck tech video. Today, we have a red-green deck with Minsc and Boo, Timeless Heroes. This card is absolutely insane. But, what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be making very large creatures and throwing them at our opponents, or just putting a crap ton of +1 counters on it, drawing cards. Fun times. So let's get right into it. First up is land base. I want to thank my friend for allowing me to do this deck tech video for him. So first up is command tower, stomping ground, Rootbound Crag, Rockfall Valley, Temple of Abandon. Castle Garenbrig is going to be very good for us because this will allow us to spend mana on very large creatures for only 4 mana. Because paying 4 mana to get 6 mana, it's pretty good. Now we have our choice of red or green mana with the Timber Crown pathway. Evolving Wilds, so we can go get basics. Terramorphic Expanse, so we can get basics. I still think this needs a Wooded Foothills. Now we have Reliquary Tower. We're running this because we're going to be drawing a lot of cards. Now we have Rogue's Passage. Rogue's Passage is going to ensure that very large creature is going to kill your opponent and they can't block. Now we have Skarg the Rage Pits. This is going to make a creature that doesn't have trample have trample. And it gets bigger by 1 for only 2 mana. That's pretty good. Now we have a all-time favorite of mine with Kessig Wolfrun. If you have a lot of mana lying around, we're going to make that large creature even larger. Okay. We're running a lot of forests. I think it's like 14. Yep, 14. And 8 mountain. So, let me know what y'all think of that land base. It's pretty simple, just very cut and dry. Get green mana, get red mana, stuff like that. But if you feel it could use a couple different lands, let me know in the comments below. Okay, let's get into the artifacts. First up is Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Talisman of Impulse, Thought Vessel. That way we don't have a maximum hand size because we're going to be drawing a lot of cards with these very large creatures. Okay, now we got some equipment that's going to help us make our creature even bigger. Pretty much the whole premise of this is continue busting out insanely large creatures that we're going to use to one-shot our opponents with just a massive creature. But Black Blade Reforged is going to help us even faster because most of these very large creatures are legendary. And they're going to get +1/+1 for each land you control if he's wielding the Black Blade. Next, we have Mage Slayer. Mage Slayer does a very good job at dealing damage because that creature only has to attack if it's equipped to this. Because let's say it's a 16-16. Your opponent is going to take 16 damage right when that creature attacks. And with Minsc, you can fling that creature again. So a 16 power creature with Mage Slayer and Minsc, that's a lot of damage. Next, we have a standard favorite with Embercleave. Just the simple fact of it gives the creature +1 double strike and trample with flash. And most of the time your opponent isn't suspecting an Embercleave. You're going to kill them very quickly. And that's precisely what we're trying to do. Next, we have a fun one. It's like a smaller Embercleave with two-handed axe. But what's going to make this very powerful is the fact of once this is equipped, you're going to double its power whenever that creature attacks. But you can send it on an adventure and sneakily give a creature your opponent isn't suspecting to be very large and give it double strike with Sweeping Cleave as the adventure side. Okay, let's get into the enchantments. Of course, a Gruul creature deck would not be complete without Rhythm of the Wild. I love this card. Giving all your creatures the power not to be countered and the option of putting a +1 counter on it or just having haste if it doesn't have haste is amazing to me. Next, we have probably the strongest green draw card enchantment I could find with Greater Good. Because all we have to do is sacrifice that creature and we can draw many, many, many cards. And the fact the only downside is you have to discard 3 cards. That's really not that big of an issue. Especially when you could kill your opponents in literally 2 attacks. Okay, now we have Ranger class. Ranger class is going to be very good because it's going to give us a wolf token, which is like a starting creature that we can build on by throwing counters on it. But level 2 is kind of what we're after because whenever we attack, we're going to put a +1 counter on that attacking creature. So our creatures are going to scale every single combat. Pun intended. Here's hardened scales. So when we put any +1 counters on our creatures, hardened scales is going to put more of those counters. Next, we have Unnatural Growth. This is a very powerful card. This is just an enchantment that's going to double our creature's power and toughness every single combat. Next, we have Warstorm Surge, because we want our opponents to take a crap ton of damage. They're going to take a crap ton of damage whenever any of our big creatures come into the battlefield. You can use this directly at our opponent or use it to pick off some of their creatures. But all in all, just go for the face. Punch him in the face, kids. Okay, we're running 3 planeswalkers. First up is Vivian Arcbow Ranger. She's gonna put 2 counters on our creatures. She's gonna give them trample. That's just her plus ability. But we're gonna use her minus to take our larger creature and kill our opponent's creatures. Or planeswalkers, if you want. But if one of our major creatures gets exiled, Vivian's going to get this back for us. Next, we have Luca, Bound to Ruin. This card is exceptional. For the simple fact of he's going to add mana for us. He's going to make a 3/3 Phyrexian Beast with Toxic that we can use to make even bigger. So instead of just regular combat damage, we can use the Toxic and kill our opponents that way. Now we have Jessica, Thrice Reborn. Basically, she's going to take the normal damage and triple it. Or she's just going to deal damage directly to our opponents. And that sounds fun. Okay, let's get into the sorceries. First up is Chandra's Ignition. Basically, we're going to utilize our very large creatures by dealing more damage to our opponents. Now, we need some mana ramp because these creatures are kind of expensive. So, first up is Nature's Lore, Rampant Growth, Ranger's Path, now, we're going to capitalize on drawing as many cards as possible. And a very powerful way to do that is Rishkar's Expertise. Because we're going to have a large-ass creature. And we're going to draw that many cards. But, because most of the time those creatures, mana cost is going to be more than 5. We get to cast a spell without paying its mana cost. And that sounds amazing. Okay, now we have some more removal with Blasphemous Act. Hull Breach. This will deal with the pesky artifacts and enchantments. Chaos Warp, which we know by now can be used in many different ways. Beast Within. This can deal with our opponent's planeswalkers, commanders, other creatures. Or we can turn a Llanowar Elf into a 3/3. Next, we have a couple fight spells. This is like targeted removal because chances are our creature's power is going to be way bigger than our opponent's. So why not just take them out early? Now we have more artifact and enchantment removal with Return to Nature. We can also snipe a card from a graveyard if that's what your opponent is trying to do. Like reanimate something. You can just be like, go away. Next is a fun one. with Rampage of the Clans. So if your opponent is on a artifact theme, has a crap ton of artifacts and enchantments, we're just going to blow them up, and yeah, they might get some tokens out of it, but chances are we're just going to run them over anyway. It's a pretty good payoff. Next, we have Invigorating Surge. This is going to put a crap ton of +1 counters on our creatures. Next, we have Inspiring Call. This is kind of like a little bit of both. We're going to get a +1 counter on it. It's going to gain indestructible until the end of turn, but more importantly, this is going to draw us a bunch of cards. Okay, now in order to continue to deal as much damage as possible, we're going to want to continually double that creature's power. So we're going to do that with Unleash Fury. And once we've made that creature insanely large, smacked our opponent with it, killed one, okay, cool. I'm going to sacrifice it and fling it at another opponent, thus taking out a second opponent. Or third if you're really lucky. Next, we have a MDFC with Kozol's Fury. This is another fling, but it's also a land. Okay, let's get into those big-ass creatures. The first couple creatures are going to get bigger on their own. And first up is Torian Mauler. Torian Mauler is pretty iconic. Basically, this is going to get a +1 counter whenever your opponent casts anything. They cast the Land War Elf, this gets a counter. They cast the Dark Ritual, this gets a counter. They go and search for a basic land with Kanama's Reach, this gets a counter. Yada yada yada. Moving on. Similar to Torian Mauler is Mana Gorger Hydra. This one's a little bit better because it has trample. But it does mean you can't give a very large Torian Mauler trample. Next is a very scary one with Forgotten Ancient. I've lost to this card many times because I had really no way to deal with it. But what makes Forgotten Ancient very unique is the fact you can move his +1 counters around on various creatures. Next, we have Xenagos, God of Rebels. This guy is going to be responsible for the death of our opponents by making that creature have double strike every single combat. It's a crazy card. All right. Now we have Atali, Primal Conqueror. The original Atali was powerful. This card is absolutely broken because a 7/7 that's going to cast stuff from your opponents. Yeah, that's cool. But it's the simple fact of what this thing transforms into. This thing will transform into a almost unkillable trampling Blightsteel Colossus from hell. Fun times. And we're going to utilize this. Fun fact, though. If you deal combat damage with a very large infector and you fling it, I believe it still retains the infect properties. Okay, moving on. Now we have Galta. Galta is the flagship big-ass dinosaur. She is one pissed off T-Rex. She's going to take all these other big-ass creatures we have in our hand and just drop them on the board. Now we have a huge creature with Tyrannus Rex. Not only this spell can't be countered, it's the simple fact of this thing is trample, ward 4, toxic 4, and it's an 8/8. This is one scary Phyrexian dinosaur. Now we have Deuce. The big Deuce. Deuce of Calamity. This card's fun. Your opponents hate their lands being blown up. We don't care. Because chances are we're going to deal 6 damage no matter what. Have fun blowing up them lands, kids. Now we have a very comical one with Froghemoth. This is a very powerful card. Because you're going to deal with your opponent's graveyards. This is going to get bigger. You're going to gain 1 life. Like, it's fun. This card is very good against, like, storm decks that rely on their graveyard. You know, kind of like that Kess video I played. This guy's going to be very good against that deck. Now we have a personal favorite of mine with Elder Gargroth. I played this card in Standard. It was very powerful. And it's really hard to deal with. Because it's going to give you tokens. You're going to gain life. You're going to draw cards. It already has Vigilance, Reach, and Trample. And for 5 mana, that's pretty cheap. Now we have Defiler of Vigor. I haven't gotten to play with this card too much, but those who have say it's very powerful. Very similar to the very similar to Elder Gargroth. Sorry, lost my train of thought there. But yeah, this is just gonna put counters on stuff. You can pay life and add mana. Yeah, this guy's good. Okay, now we got Battle Mammoth. That is one pissed off elephant. It's a 6/5 with trampled. And whenever this becomes targeted, you get to draw cards. And you can foretell it. Yeah, this guy's solid. Now we got another pissed off dinosaur with Vaultmorn Tyrant. This card's very powerful. So even if this guy dies, like, even if let's say we pump this guy a lot, it's already a 6/6. So the fact it's already a 6/6, that's good. We're gonna make this guy bigger. We're gonna fling it. We're gonna make a copy of it. Seems good. Now we have good old Stonebrow, Croson Hero. These are going to be the creatures that synergize with all of our bigger creatures. And Minsc. So, Stonebrow, basically, if that creature has trample, it gets bigger. If it doesn't have trample, we're going to give it trample. That way it benefits from Stonebrow. Now we have Savage Ventmaw. We've seen this guy before. This is the guy that makes a crap ton of mana. 6 mana that doesn't empty during phases. Seems good. Then we have Quartzwood Crasher. This is a 5 mana 6/6 with trample that makes dinosaur tokens. So if we're dealing a lot of damage, we're going to be making very large tokens. Seems good. Now we have one from the Warhammer set with Screamer Killer. This is a Tyrannid. Basically, whenever we cast a creature spell with mana value 5 or greater, we're going to throw 5 damage around. Because why not? Now we have Goreclaw. This is just a pissed off bear. This guy is going to be really good for us because he's going to be a cost reduction with our bigger creatures. Plus, he gets bigger himself. And he gives himself trample. So, yeah, why not? Alright, now we need some rampy elves. Of course, there's Finhorn elves. Llanowar elves. And if it's a red creature or a green creature, let's make that creature bigger. With Board Toss Leash. Seems good. Next, we have Ogre Battle Driver. This guy is very powerful. He's going to give more creatures we control haste and make them bigger, which is exactly what we want to do. Next, we have Halana, Kessig Ranger. Basically, she's going to help us kill our opponent's creatures with our creatures just by paying 2 mana. Seems good. Now we need a way to go get those big creatures. So we're playing Monwolvi Beast Tracker. And to continue with the trample theme is Archetype of Aggression. This is going to be very beneficial for us and not our opponents. Our creatures can have trample. Yours cannot. Sorry, Timmy. Now we have Kenra Charioteer. This is just another let's give that big boy trample. Now we have Goblin Anarchomancer. We've seen this guy before. This is just a helpful cost reduction if it's red or green, which we are. Now we have Halana and Elena. They're partners. They're going to help us make our creatures bigger every single combat. Now we have a Tullen Jackal. I'm not too familiar with this guy. But basically, when this guy deals combat damage, we're just going to keep getting more basic lanes. I think that's why we're playing so many basics. That makes sense. And, of course, Anger. Anger doesn't do much on the battlefield. But this guy dies. He blocks well. If this is in your graveyard, all your creatures have haste. Cool. Alright. Well, that was the deck tech for good old Minsc. Oh, that furry little hamster causing chaos. Well, I really hope you guys enjoyed that deck tech. I've played against this deck many times. It's really fun. It's very powerful. But until next time, kids, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you guys in the next video.